Wait, you're serious? You've never been to a place like this.
I'm just a simple mechanic, but I'm glad my wrong turn brought me to your table.
The restaurant glowed with candlelight and quiet elegance. Jake Matthews wiped his hands one more time on his jeans, knowing it wouldn't help. At 32, he was a mechanic who spent his days under cars, and his hands showed it. Calloused, scarred, permanently marked by engine grease no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. He shouldn't be here. This restaurant was the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists thicker than phone books. But his sister had set up a blind date with her friend from college, and she'd chosen the location. Just try, Jake. You can't spend every night alone in your garage. Jake checked the reservation name on his phone. Sarah, 7 p.m., table for 2. He'd arrived early, nervous, and told the hostess he was meeting someone. Right this way? Sir. She led him to a table where a woman sat alone. Blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing an elegant blue dress. She was beautiful, but something seemed off. She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, and there was a wheelchair positioned beside the table. Your date is here, the hostess announced cheerfully before disappearing. The woman looked up, confusion flickering across her face. I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. I'm Jake, he said, extending his hand before noticing she didn't move to shake it. He quickly withdrew, embarrassed. Jake Matthews. My sister Sarah set this up. She said her college friend would meet me here. I'm not Sarah, the woman said gently. I'm Emily Harrison. I'm also here on a blind date, but clearly not with you. Jake's face burned.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
The hostess must have... I'll just go find the right table. Wait, Emily said, a smile playing at her lips. Sit for just a moment. This is actually the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months. Jake hesitated, then sat. I'm really sorry. My sister set this up, and I'm terrible at this whole dating thing. I shouldn't even be here. I'm a mechanic, I work on cars, and I don't belong in places like this. Why not? Emily asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Look at me. Jake gestured at his simple shirt and jeans, his work-worn hands. Everyone here is dressed like they're going to the opera. I probably have grease under my fingernails that won't come out until next Tuesday. And you... He gestured at her elegant dress, the expensive jewelry. You're clearly used to much nicer things. Don't assume you know what I'm used to, Emily said, but kindly, though you're partially right. My father is CEO of Harrison Industries. This is his favorite restaurant. He set up my blind date tonight with some junior executive he thinks would be appropriate. She said the last word with distaste. Jake noticed she still hadn't moved from her careful position. Can I ask? I don't mean to be rude, but why the wheelchair? Car accident 2 years ago, Emily said matter-of-factly. Spinal injury. I can't walk. Most men find that intimidating, which is why my father screens all my dates like he's hiring employees, making sure they can handle his paralyzed daughter. The bitterness in her voice cut through Jake's embarrassment. That sounds awful. Being treated like you're fragile instead of just yourself. Emily looked at him with surprise. That's exactly what it's like. Everyone either treats me like I'm made of glass or like I'm an obligation. My father's latest project? Find Emily a suitable husband who won't be burdened by her condition. That's ridiculous, Jake said. You're not a burden. You're just a person who happens to use a wheelchair. Most people don't see it that way. Then most people are idiots. Emily laughed, genuine and surprised. I think I like you better than whoever my father set me up with. Well, I'm definitely not who your father would choose, Jake said. I barely graduated high school, I work with my hands, and I drive a 15-year-old truck. But I can change a tire in under 5 minutes, and I rebuild classic cars in my spare time. That sounds more interesting than corporate small talk about quarterly earnings, Emily said. What kind of classic cars? They talked for 20 minutes. Emily asked about his work with genuine interest, what cars he'd restored, what he loved about mechanics, why he'd chosen that path. Jake asked about her life before the accident. She'd been an artist, painter mostly, and was trying to adapt her technique to work from her wheelchair. The hand control is harder now, Emily admitted. But I'm learning. Art was the one thing my father never controlled, the one part of my life that was mine. I'm not giving it up. Good, Jake said firmly. Don't give up things you love because they're harder now. That's when they matter most. Emily smiled at him warmly, and Jake felt something shift in his chest. This woman, with her father's expectations and her own courage, was remarkable. I should probably find my actual table, Jake said reluctantly. My real date is probably wondering where I am. And my corporate drone should be arriving any minute, Emily said with less enthusiasm. Jake stood, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? If you weren't here on your father's arranged date, would you want to have dinner with someone like me? A mechanic with grease under his fingernails who knows nothing about wine but everything about carburetors? Emily looked at him steadily. Someone like you is exactly who I'd want to have dinner with. Someone who sees me instead of my wheelchair. Someone who talks to me like I'm a person instead of a project. So yes, definitely yes. Then can I have your number? For a real date, not a wrong table accident? Before Emily could answer, a man in an expensive suit approached their table. Emily, I'm Bradley Morrison. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. He barely glanced at Jake, already dismissing him as irrelevant. Emily's father appeared behind Bradley, looking imperious. Emily, darling, I see you've met Bradley, youngest VP in our acquisitions department. Brilliant career ahead. Richard Harrison's eyes landed on Jake with clear disapproval. And who is this? This is Jake, Emily said, her voice carrying an edge. He's a mechanic. We were just having a fascinating conversation about art and passion and doing what you love regardless of obstacles. How nice, Richard said dismissively. Jake, was it? I'm sure you need to get back to your table now. Bradley is here for Emily. Jake looked at Emily, who gave him a small, sad smile. He started to leave, but something in her expression stopped him. He thought about what she'd said about being controlled, about expectations, about giving up what you love because it's harder. He turned back to Richard Harrison. With respect, sir, I think Emily should decide who she wants to have dinner with. Richard's face darkened. Excuse me? Dad, Emily said, and there was steel in her voice now. Jake is right. I'm 28 years old. I've had my spine crushed, spent months in physical therapy, adapted to a completely new way of living. I'm not a child and I'm not your employee. I make my own decisions. She looked at Bradley, who seemed uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Bradley. I'm sure you're very nice, but I'd like to have dinner with Jake instead. Emily! Her father snapped. This is completely inappropriate. This man is a mechanic. He's not suitable. He's more suitable than any man you've paraded in front of me, Emily interrupted, because he looked at my face when he talked to me, not at my wheelchair. He asked about my art, my interests, what I care about, not about whether I'd be a proper accessory for business dinners. She looked at Jake. If the offer still stands, I'd love to have dinner with you, here or anywhere else, preferably somewhere less stuffy where we can actually talk. Jake's heart soared. There's a diner near my shop. Best burgers in the city, absolutely no dress code, and you can watch classic cars drive by through the window. Interested? That sounds perfect. Richard stepped between them. Emily, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave with a complete stranger. What about your safety? Your condition? My condition is that I can't walk, Dad. I'm not helpless. Emily maneuvered her wheelchair expertly away from the table. And Jake isn't a stranger. He's someone who treated me like a person in 20 minutes while Bradley hasn't even looked at me since he arrived. Bradley had the grace to look embarrassed. Jake helped. Emily with her chair, not because she needed help, but because she directed him on what would actually be useful. They left together, leaving Richard Harrison sputtering and Bradley looking relieved. In the parking lot, Jake stopped. I should tell you something. My truck isn't exactly wheelchair accessible. I didn't think... I have a van, Emily said, specially modified. I'll drive. You navigate? The diner was everything Jake had promised. Worn vinyl booths, checkered floors, and the best burgers Emily had ever tasted. They talked for hours, about her art and his cars, about her accident and his decision to skip college for trade school, about loss and adaptation and choosing joy despite obstacles. My father is going to be impossible about this, Emily admitted. Do you care? She thought about it. I care that he's disappointed, but I care more about living my own life. I've spent 2 years letting him make decisions for me because I was scared and recovering and unsure. Tonight reminded me that I'm stronger than that. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Jake said. And I work with guys who lift engine blocks for fun. Over the next months, Jake and Emily built something real. He modified his workshop with ramps and accessible spaces so she could visit while he worked. She taught him about art, introducing him to galleries and techniques. They merged their worlds, his mechanical precision and her creative vision. Richard Harrison fought it at first, making clear his disapproval. But Emily held firm. Dad, I love you, but I'm going to live my own life with someone who sees me for who I am, not what you want me to be. A year after that wrong table meeting, Jake proposed in his workshop. He'd built a custom lowered workbench where Emily could paint comfortably from her wheelchair, and he'd painted above it. Will you share my workshop forever? Yes, Emily said, crying and laughing, but only if you share my studio. They married in a simple ceremony at the diner where they'd had their first real date. Richard Harrison attended, having slowly come to respect the man who loved his daughter without conditions or expectations. At the reception, Emily's father approached Jake. I owe you an apology. When I met you, I saw only what you weren't. Not wealthy, not corporate, not what I'd planned for Emily. I didn't see what you were. Kind, genuine, someone who saw my daughter as a whole person. You've given her back the confidence I'd been unknowingly taking away. She never lost it, Jake said. She just needed someone to believe she could live on her own terms. Years later, Jake and Emily ran a unique business together. Restoration of classic cars with custom accessibility modifications. Emily designed them, bringing artistic vision to functional adaptation. Jake built them, bringing mechanical expertise to creative dreams. Do you ever think about that night? Emily asked, watching Jake work on a 1967 Mustang adapted for hand controls. The night I sat at the wrong table? All the time. Best mistake you ever made? Best thing that ever happened to me, Jake corrected. Though it wasn't a mistake. It was fate putting me exactly where I needed to be. Because sometimes the wrong table is actually the right one. Sometimes the best connections happen when plans go sideways. And sometimes, a mechanic with grease under his fingernails is exactly the right person for a CEO's daughter. Not despite their differences, but because of the way those differences complement each other, building something stronger than either could create alone. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales about unexpected love and seeing people for who they truly are. Comment about a time when a mistake led to something wonderful. The best chapters often begin with wrong turns.